Today on the Educational Duct Tape Podcast, I'm joined by Dan Stitzel, Director of Technology at Streetsboro City Schools, with a 15-year career spanning classroom teaching, tech coaching, and leadership in district technology. Dan brings a wealth of knowledge on innovation and tech integration. Together, we explore ways to turn whole class review games into engaging formative assessments, including tips on using generative AI to build custom question sets for Jeopardy, Quizizz, and beyond. We also dig into the latest AI features in Quizizz. Plus, I'm going to share about BlueSky and share some exciting updates to other tools, including Canva Magic Studio, Google Forms' new star rating, and MagicSchool's presentation generator. Here we go. When I think of my childhood, I think of He-Man, Choose Your Own Adventure books, Michael Jordan, and Blooket. Do you remember Pizza Hut's Blooket program? My sister and I devoured books so that we could devour free personal pan pizzas at Pizza Hut. And that pizza always tasted better because I read those Wayside School books in order to earn those pizzas. Blooket helped me fall in love with books and pizza. And today's sponsor, Short Answer, will help your learners fall in love with writing. The team at Short Answer knows the best way to become a better writer is to write, and write some more. And they found a way to make it fun and engaging. With gamified activities and tools like peer feedback and reflection, students aren't just writing more, they're writing better and doing it in a community of writers. Short Answer helps students improve their writing in any subject: ELA, science, math, social studies, you name it. Teachers, try Short Answer for free at www.myshortanswer.com and use code JakeMillerWrites for 3 months of premium access for free. So book it over to myshortanswer.com to see how they can help your learners love to write.
Welcome to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller.
Hey there, duct tapers. Whether you're a longtime listener or tuning in for the very first time, welcome to the show. I'm Jake, an educator from Ohio, and by joining us today, you are officially a duct taper. That means you're on board with the educational duct tape metaphor, where we use EdTech, like duct tape, as a tool to solve problems, achieve goals, and meet learning standards. Now, before we dive in, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the elephant in the soccer field or football field or baseball diamond or theater stage. It has been over a month, maybe 2 months since our last episode. Between all the fall activities and games and practices and rehearsals, I have been busy. So thanks for your patience as I navigate the dad life and the day job. I'm excited to be in front of the microphone right now, and I hope to release episodes as frequently as possible in the future. Speaking of updates, I've got something bittersweet to share. You might remember this interactive feature where I invited you, the duct tapers, to share your thoughts and insights for the podcast. So I was trying to do it where we'd have an episode with an interview, we'd talk about a topic, and then the next episode would be you, the duct tapers, sharing your answer to that same question. Well, after a few episodes, I've decided to let that go. And honestly, I probably should have foreseen this. Educators are super busy, and finding time for you to contribute to a podcast is no small feat. So while we're saying goodbye to this segment, I want to thank everyone who participated. It was such a cool experiment. You shared lots of cool things, but we're going to retire that. I do have a replacement coming in the next episode. You'll learn about that soon. That said, the silver lining is that I'll be able to focus on putting out more regular episodes, less waiting between releases, and more of the content you love, or I think you love it. Maybe you just tolerate this content. I'm not sure. But don't worry. I still do want to hear from all of you. You can always connect with me on social media at JakeMillerEDU. Share with other duct tapers on social media using the hashtag EDUDuctTape. Email me your questions or send me a quick message through SpeakPipe. So while those episodes where we're spotlighting the duct tapers are being retired, there are lots of chances for you to engage, and you might just be hearing a little more about that in today's soapbox moment. But I do love hearing your thoughts, and those connections are what make this community special. And so please do reach out and share, even though we don't have those dedicated episodes for doing that. All right, with that said, let's get into today's episode. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me just grab my soapbox from over here. Yeah. There we go. That's perfect. Climb up on there. Longtime listeners of the podcast. First off, hello, longtime duct tapers. And thank you for sticking with me through all of my shenanigans. Anyhow, those longtime listeners, those people I just addressed right now, might remember something I used to rave about back in the day, the adjacent possible. Now, I don't typically repeat soapbox moment topics, but this one is so pertinent right now, I just have to talk about it. So for the newbies, what is the adjacent possible? Well, if you're a longtime listener and don't want to hear about it again, go ahead and skip like 90 seconds forward. But for the rest of you, it's a concept that I see as really core to this podcast. The adjacent possible is a really cool sounding term, actually, that started with evolutionary biologist Stuart Kauffman. Science teachers, if you had evolutionary biologist on your educational duct tape bingo board for today, you are welcome. Anyhow, Kauffman explained how in the evolution of living things, new species and traits can only arise from what already exists. Evolution takes one step at a time. In other words, what's possible comes from what's adjacent to it. Kauffman also applies this idea to human creativity and innovation. New ideas emerge by combining existing concepts and building upon what is already known. Now, I'm not a big video game guy, but I like to picture the adjacent possible as the original Legend of Zelda game that I played as a kid. It's the one where Link travels through a map that looks like a series of connected rooms. When Link is in one room, the only rooms he can access are the ones directly connected to it. But when he steps into one of those rooms, then he has new doors to explore. That's kind of how the adjacent possible works. This idea blew my mind when I first heard about it in The Innovator's Mindset by George Couros. And Couros picked it up from Steven Johnson's Where Good Ideas Come From, and Johnson picked it up from Kauffman. That's the adjacent possible in action, actually. Ideas evolving step by step, one person building on another person's brilliance. And here's where we come to the new part. And those of you who skipped over that 90 seconds, welcome back in. This brings me to Twitter, or should I say X, or more accurately, the artist formerly known as the thriving edu-Twitter community. For a decade, Twitter was the place for educators to connect and to learn and to share. It was an amazing space for ideas to evolve step by step, demonstrating the adjacent possible. My career path shows the adjacent possible, and Twitter was the catalyst of it all. But let's face it, over the past few years, it's felt less like the magical idea-sparking space it once was, and more like a ghost town with the occasional tumbleweed of inspiration blowing by, and more often, honestly, a sandstorm of bots and ads and arguments and clickbait. And look, I'm not here to analyze why it became a ghost town. Not only is this not a political podcast, the reason it happened is moot. Twitter is not the same anymore. Now, I don't need to autopsy it. What I do need is a new place to connect with educators. Enter BlueSky. So BlueSky is Twitter's adjacent possible. It evolved out of Twitter, and honestly, it feels kind of like 2013 Twitter, full of hope and collaboration and opportunity. And for educators, it's the perfect next room in our adjacent possible. If you join us there, you'll find that BlueSky is a lot like Twitter. A few key differences is that it gives you more control over what you see and how it's moderated by letting you choose your own algorithms and customize your feed. It's not set up for things to go viral or to sell ads. It's set up for connection, and that's what we want it to be set up for. I believe that BlueSky and the hashtag EDUSky community can be like stepping through one of Link's doors. By making the leap, you're opening yourself up to new ideas, connections, and opportunities to share, and those may not have been possible without entering that new room. And honestly, it's making learning on social media fun again, at least for me. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You'll encounter people there with different opinions. But isn't that part of learning? The good news is BlueSky gives you more control over what you see and engage with than Twitter ever did. So when those different opinions go from pushing your thinking, which is a good thing, to pushing your buttons, which is a bad thing, you can make it so you don't see those things anymore. So I hope that you'll join me on BlueSky. Here's what I want you to do. Number 1, create your account, of course. Number 2, follow me at Jake Miller EDU. And number 3, fill out the EDU Sky form that I've linked in the show notes. So Alice Keeler created this EduSky or EDU Sky group and this form as a one-stop shop to jumpstart your BlueSky experience. So once you fill out that form, you'll be directed to a spreadsheet. Your name will go into that spreadsheet by filling out the form. And you'll see a whole bunch of other things in there, one of which are starter packs. So that's step 4. Use the starter packs. These are curated lists of educators you can follow with just one click. It's like hitting the skip intro button on Netflix, but instead of binge watching episodes, you're binge connecting with educators on social media. That's step 4. Use the starter packs. Step 5, check out the list of EDU chats. Remember Twitter chats? That's a memory that makes me smile right there. They were an early EduTwitter gem, scheduled chats where educators dove into topics in real time. Well, guess what? They're back, but now they're on BlueSky. And so far, they've been vibrant and joyful. And step 6, finally, if you're a fan of this show, I'd like to create us a little community on there. So post about the podcast on BlueSky with the hashtag #EduDuctTape. I'll see that post and I'll add you to a dedicated listener list so that we could see each other and connect with each other. So in conclusion, why BlueSky? Because it's not just the next step in social media's evolution, it has the potential to present to us the next step in our evolution as educators. It's where we can learn together and grow together as part of each other's adjacent possible. So what are you waiting for? Press pause, join BlueSky, and step into the next room of your professional growth adventure.
Today's guest.
Today's guest is Dan Stitzel. Dan has worked for the Streetsboro City Schools for 15 years as a classroom teacher, district technology coach, and now as the director of technology. Through these years, Dan has had the chance to present at the district, local, state, and national level on various tech integration tools and strategies. And Dan's current tech obsessions are generative AI and computer science. You can connect with Dan by emailing him at dnstitzel@gmail.com. And as always, that is in the show notes, but not in the show notes. Actually, here in the podcast is Dan. What's up, Dan?
Hey, how are you, Jake? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing good. We're like finishing something we started 4 years ago or something like that. Dan is a half guest in the past. What do you even call that?
Yeah, it was like the real 20-minute, what's one little strategy? And yeah, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, that was 2019 maybe. I feel like when you do, I'm a big SNL fan, and you know how they'll have like the 3 Timers Club and the 4 Timers Club, and they get like the special jackets, and like John Hamm's been on like 7 times or whatever. You're going to have your like 1.5 guest appearances jacket. I don't know what it's going to be.
And just have a little piece of duct tape, not the whole roll. Like it's just like a little.
Maybe, or like as one sleeve and a half of a sleeve,
that's perfect.
Maybe, or something.
That's perfect. It's good for Ohio weather.
Right. Because in the morning, you're going to be glad you have the full sleeve. Yeah. In the afternoon, you're going to be glad you have the half of a sleeve. That's perfect here in Ohio.
Perfect.
I don't know if you remember the predicament that led to that interview. So Missy, your colleague in Streetsboro, had been at a workshop that I did, and we recorded an episode live in person, and then I lost the recording somehow. I don't know. It was probably in between the cushions in my couch or something. I don't know where I lost it to. And then we were like, we have to record it virtually. And so we did. And I think Missy needed your help connecting or something. Like you had it all ready for her while she was teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then it was like, hey,
let's just already here.
2 for the price of 1. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they were half, so 1 for the price of a half, I guess. Because there's mini episodes.
I forgot my jacket has 1.5 sleeves. That's right.
Right. Missy's only has a half of a sleeve,
true.
So you got her there.
That's true.
It's half tank top, half t-shirt.
It's perfect.
We're rambling here, Dan. As you can tell, Dan and I have known each other for years. We're both Ohio natives and like to meet up at the local EdTech conferences and hang out and chit chat about pop culture and EdTech at the same time. A little more about the pop culture, and dad life, and a little less about the EdTech. But today we'll talk a little EdTech.
Yes, we have a lot in common when it comes to music and food. So that's what we talk. That's what we talk mostly about: tacos and music.
Right, for sure. For sure. My most recent concert experience, Dan, was Melanie Martinez. Do you know Melanie Martinez?
I do not know Melanie Martinez.
Do not run and look up Melanie Martinez. This was for my daughter. This is my daughter's favorite artist. It was her Christmas gift. It was a trip to see Melanie Martinez. And it was a sea of pink in the crowd and just like crazy outfits. But she was giddy, so it was all worth it. So that is not a distaste for that might be a musical sharing of the two of us. All right, Dan, let's get to some actual educational duct tape.
All right.
As you know, we've got to start off with 2 truths and 1 lie.
2 truths and 1 lie.
It's a lot of pressure, and especially too because like you were saying, like we know each other, and so it took me a really long time to come up with these because I was like, oh, I think I've mentioned that before. Oh, so then I had to have like my whole team look at it, and by my whole team I mean I had to read it, all of them to my wife, and then she had to tell me which one I really should use. So I think I got you though.
Your whole team.
Yep.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm gonna mess up the game because that's what I always do anyhow.
All right, here we go.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Number 1. I was born in Kent County, Michigan, and then I moved to Ohio when I was 2 years old. And then 16 years later, I went to Kent State in Kent, Ohio for my undergrad. So born in Kent County, Michigan, and then I moved to Ohio, and then I went to Kent State in Kent, Ohio. So lots of Kent.
Wow.
All right, number 2. Wow. When I was born, my parents could not agree on a name for me, so I let my 4 sisters name me. And in true late 1980s fashion, I was named after Ralph Macchio's character of Daniel LaRusso from The Karate Kid. And
okay.
So, and then my 3rd here is you're actually currently talking to royalty. I was crowned the 2004 King of Hearts at my high school Valentine's dance, and the Queen of Hearts is now my wife.
Okay, I believe the 3rd one for sure. Because you just got Riz, as the kids say nowadays. And I'm 99.5% sure that you and your wife were high school sweethearts. So I'm believing that one. The second one, I forgot what the second one was.
Second one is that my sisters named me after Daniel LaRusso from The Karate Kid. So
I know like there are a lot of sisters in your family, so I know that much. So that I believe that part. Is it 4? I don't know. What I'm questioning is, was The Karate Kid out before you were born? That seems a little bit. That's close, right? It would certainly been super hot if it was, Ralph would have been, people would have been pretty pumped about Ralph. And I've never heard you mention Michigan before, so I think I'm doubting both of those. I think the first one is the lie. I think that's the lie.
I thought I had you. I really did.
No, you did. I was struggling. I was struggling there.
That's an entire lie because I was not born in Kent. I actually had to look up today other Kents. And so I was not born in Kent County, Michigan. And I didn't even go to Kent State.
There was a Kent County, Michigan.
It's
no, and I was doubting that too.
Yeah,
Where did you go?
I went to Bowling Green. So I actually started my lie with I was born in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and then went to Bowling Green State University. But I'm like, that's not an entire lie because I did go to Bowling Green State University. So I had to like bring it all back and lie entirely. But yeah, Kent County, Michigan, evidently is where Grand Rapids is. So it's a pretty populated area. Oh. But yeah, I learned some things today coming up with lies. But yeah, you got me on that one.
Yeah.
So
who knew? But all that matters is that we both learned.
True.
And we both learned today.
That's true.
I learned new things about you. I don't think you knew. I knew you went to Bowling Green. You probably have told me, and I just am not a good listener, as my wife would confirm. I did not know you were named after Ralph Macchio. I didn't even know. I didn't know that those years would have matched up. I thought Karate Kid was more like later 80s. I thought that was like right at the end of the 80s. So I'm surprised by that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of surprises.
Unless they've just been lying to me my entire life, and I was actually just named Daniel randomly, and then they connected it later. But no, that's the story. My parents could not agree on a name, and so they just let my sisters decide, and here I am. And then and I am a king. I'm the king of hearts. And actually, my mom just got rid of my crown like 2 years ago. So
why would she do that? Why would she do that?
I know, or she put it somewhere, but it was hanging up in my old bedroom for ever. So yeah.
I learned. See, it was worth it. It was fun.
I thought I had you.
Okay. All right. Let's get into some educational duct tape, the real educational duct tape now. So this is a reminder for the folks listening, whether they're new or just they're like, I haven't listened to this podcast in 3 years. How does this work? Educational duct tape. Dan, I don't have to remind you because you were my talented free editor for my book, Educational Duct Tape. Thank you for that, by the way. But Dan knows the metaphor well because he's like had to hear me drone on through the book. Not hear me, read me droning on about it. But educational duct tape is my metaphor that educational technology is at its best when we use it as a tool to solve problems like duct tape rather than as the goal of our lesson. So we'll always ask a question that's like, teacher wants to do this. What technology or technology-related strategy can we use to help us? So my question for you, Dan, is what tool or strategy would you use to do a whole class review game with formative assessment included? So I want to give a disclaimer here. This might not be, I've learned a lot since I originally started talking about this formative assessment and educational duct tape. I don't think review games always give us the richest formative assessment data, right? But the operative word here is we want to do a review game. We want that fun piece, and we will get formative assessment data out of it. So maybe there's certain tools where we're like, wow, that's an amazing formative assessment tool, but here we're focused on it being a game experience too. So just want to give that disclaimer. So what would you use, Dan?
So I love this question because gamification and just making learning fun has always been a big part of my integration. You have to do it meaningful. You can't just throw a game into the lesson, but your students are still, a lot of them are still young. They're still kids. It doesn't matter how old you are. Everybody loves to play a game. The challenge is exciting. And actually, gamification really became something big to me when I went to ISTE in 2019. I was listening to Josh, who was the founder of Gimkit. And it was an excellent speech. He did a great presentation, and he said, basically, and I can't remember his exact words, but he basically said, like, how many of you teachers in the crowd have actually asked your students why they play games? And he's like, someone asked me, and I said, because I like the competition. I like this, I like that. And that really resonated because sometimes games and playing games get a negative view because, you're just playing video games instead of doing your work or whatever it might be. But there's a reason that people are drawn to playing video games or, whatever type of game it might be. And a lot of it's the challenge, it's the reward, whatever it might be. So when he mentioned that in his presentation, it stuck with me. And so I really have tried to integrate gamification as much as possible over the last, few years since that presentation. Recently, with the huge push of AI, it's become even easier. I mean, there are so many tools that just do it so quickly for you, but there's also so many tools that you can still really have the driver's seat. You can still really control it and create those games using the content you might already have, or create those games with a little, help from whatever chatbot it might be that you're using. So the first strategy I want to talk about is just using your favorite chat, your favorite generative AI to actually generate the questions, and then how you can gamify that and do it all in about 5 minutes. Something that I have showed others how to do, staff I work with, or just people in presentations, is I'll open up ChatGPT or whatever your chat choice might be. I just always kind of default to ChatGPT. And I'll say before you open it up, copy the standard that you have been working with. So whether it's, your very specific standard or this overarching topic, whatever it might be, come in with the information. So what I like to do is, because I taught language arts for 10 years, so my mind always goes to the 8th grade language arts standards, is I copy and paste the 8th grade language arts standard for figurative language and connotative meanings. And I tell the chat, I just flat out say, like, hey, please create 40 questions for 8th grade students for the following standard. And then the really big thing is you want to make sure that you put in there, please make sure each question has a specific answer. Because a lot of these generative AI tools will do open-ended questions, which are great. They're awesome for discussions, and they're really, open-ended questions, and those, extended response questions are extremely important. But if you're trying to gamify, you want something that has a pretty specific answer. So I always make sure I say, like, please make sure that each question that you generate also has a specific answer so I can really evaluate it. And best practice always says, like, as a teacher, you do need to go back and make sure that, yes, that is the right answer. Don't ever just push something out because ChatGPT says it's right. You ultimately still need to make sure it is right. And then what's nice about that is
I think if you prompt really well too, you can eliminate some of that stuff where you get like maybe questions that are irrelevant. Like I can imagine going into AI and asking it to generate, I don't know, some formative assessment questions relating to some historical events, and it giving me questions about locations of things or the years they happened in that we might not really care about. You know what I mean? Like I don't need to assess the kids on those kinds of things. So I think if I'm really deliberate about the way I prompt it, I can avoid those things. But then you're right. I then need to go back and check it for accuracy, both in terms of like, is it asking the right questions and giving the correct answers, but also is it asking the things that you really need to ask the learners? I think those things are super important. And I would advise too, really good advice on your end to say, like, not just build me formative assessment questions about whatever the language arts topic you mentioned was, which was above my head, but actually giving the entire standard, right? Not just like, give me questions about mitosis, but giving them the whole standard of what you need to know about mitosis in there so that they gear those questions. But I'd go even further and say, if you have some kind of list of things that that goes with it that you just copy or paste in, maybe out of your planning guide or something like that, that's going to really hone those questions it asks. Like, for example, as you know, I do a lot of work related to personalized learning nowadays, and we recommend that teachers, if possible, write out learning progressions, which shows as the kids progress in their learning, they're going to start here, and then they're going to master these skills, and then these skills, and then these skills, all the way up till they're at mastery. Like if I could say, like, here's the learning progression, then it can give me questions that relate to all levels, and I could really start to know where my class is on it, which I think could be really cool. So anyhow, so you go into the AI, whatever AI chatbot you want is, you give it some details and a prompt and say, give me questions that have a clear answer.
Yeah, so that's just the beginning stage. So then after I've gone through, I've vetted and I've talked to the chat and said, hey, like, remove this question or, whatever, I kind of give those directives. Then I simply say, please gamify this and make each question worth a certain amount of fake money. And then I said, they'll take it a little further and say, in order to win the game, my students need to have $1,000. So then what it's doing now is it's taking those questions and what it will generate, it takes my advice and then it generates those questions in an order of kind of level 1 all the way up to, let's say, level 10. And level 1 questions are worth like $20. Level 3 questions are worth $40. And then all the way up to level 10 where they're worth $90. So the students, so what it's doing now is it's giving them a little more of that motivation. They see that money sign there. And it's fake money. I'm not passing out $1,000 to all my students, but it's giving them a goal at the end. They're saying, okay, in order for me to show that I've kind of mastered this, I understand it, I need to reach that $1,000 point. And I can go through and I can, do all the level 1, 2, 3 questions kind of as like to get me ready. Or if I feel pretty confident, I can almost jump to those level 6, those level 7, those level 8 questions where they're worth more money because I can still get myself to that $1,000 endpoint. So it's taking, and what you said is wonderful. If you have more information, if you have all the notes, you have that learning progression, throw that in there because it's super specific. But if you're just starting from a standard, what it did is it took my, where I just said, hey, create 40 questions based on this standard. Then I went through, I vetted those. Then from there, I told the robot, the chat, now let's make a game out of this. And in order for it to be a game, I need it kind of leveled and I need there to be, an obtainable, like there needs to be something at the end that I need to reach. And then I even take it a step further as the teacher to help myself. I just say, after it's already given me all the questions, the answers, just so that I can then copy this in an orderly way and print it, I say, can you please put all the questions, answers, and point values into a table? So then what it does for me is I can then go through and quickly see all my $20 level 1 questions, my level 2 questions that are worth 40, whatever it might be. So that if I am going through just to kind of double check that, hey, the students really did, hit that $1,000 mark, whether that's really important or not, I can, I easily have all those questions and those answers right there. And it also is really easy. It really helps me then kind of do a second vet of seeing the question and the answer before I do actually push this out to my students. So that's just using
I have questions.
Yes,
I have
yes,
thoughts.
yes,
This is
yes.
so cool. Like this is so interesting. So so when it gives it dollar values or point values, how do you feel like it's is it random, or do you feel like it's being intentional about what's worth more and what's worth less?
I will say, based on the amount of times that I've done this, they do progressively get more difficult and they get a little more in depth. So for example, the standard I used was to determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including figurative and connotative meanings, and then analyze the impact of specific word choices on meaning, mood, and tone, including analogies and allusions. So it's a pretty deep standard. I mean, there's a lot there.
Right.
So
that's not a one lesson plan standard right there.
This is, when I taught this in 8th grade, we worked on this one standard for weeks. I mean, it was really complex. So level 1 is kind of, let me find an example here. What is the connotative meaning of the word home in the phrase a warm and inviting home? So the answer there is it's a place of, comfort, security, belonging, because it's a warm and inviting home. We get that connotation, that positive connotation out of it. If we get down to a level, or jump down, I should say, to level 8 here, in the phrase, the silence was deafening, what is the figurative meaning? So now it's more, the silence was overwhelmingly noticeable. So it's, I feel that it gets a little more complex. And I think too, if what's nice about these generative AI tools is if you don't feel like they're complex enough, you can say right back to the robot, hey, could you please make the level 8 questions more of, difficult, or whatever it might be. I'm not sure what word you'd want to use, but you can have that conversation. You can go back and change that up before you ultimately say, this is what I want to give my students as this gamified formative assessment.
And what I used to do was when I first started using ChatGPT is I would take its response and take it somewhere else, in a doc, and then I would make my changes to it because I was always vetting what it did. But I now realize I shouldn't do that outside of ChatGPT. I should do that in ChatGPT and tell it what I want it to improve so that it's kind of learning from me. So if you're giving it that feedback while it goes, it's going to get better and better. One level up that I would even suggest would be to maybe explain to it either what the DOK levels are, then explain to it what you mean, what a DOK level question would, 1 question will look like, 2 question will look like, 3 question will look like, etc. And say if it's a 1, its point value should be between 10 and 30, and it's a 2, 40 to 60 or whatever, and really force the AI to understand what you mean to do by that. And the other option is too, if you did something like giving it a learning progression or proficiency scale, you could say, if it's a question that relates to this level of the proficiency scale or learning progression, whatever term you use for it, that could have X number of points. If it's this, it should have X number of points. And then really, it probably does a really good job of identifying the points itself, but that could really drive the quality there. And I love the suggestion you gave too, not to totally take this interview away from you here. I love the suggestion you gave of how a kid could say you know what, I'm going to skip the 10 and 20 point questions because I'm ready for the 80 point questions. Because that's metacognition happening right there. That's that kid going I'm at a high level of understanding here and I'm ready for the higher questions. And so if we really attach that with intention to either the standard or the elements of the standard or DOK, then the kid's doing something pretty awesome there when they think about what level question they want to answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's important to tell those students too, hey, if you feel like you're confident to go to this level, but then when you're in that level, you're you know what, I don't know, maybe I need to go back and revisit. That's actually that's impressive that you're recognizing that you need to kind of go back to that level 2 or the level, whatever it might be. So, it's never you don't, it's not hey, you jumped up here, you can't go back. I mean, that's not life. That's not reality. So if a student tries to do a higher level question and they're you know what, maybe I'm not ready for this, then go back. try the other questions that will help you get to that point. But yeah, it's, and you don't have to use like the fake money. You could use points. I don't know. For me, it's just I was always that type of student where like I needed to know there was, something I was really working towards. And even if it's a fake $1,000, whatever it is, like I can still see that goal and I can still work towards it. And I can, like we said before, like you can be that student's like, well, I'm going to just do 10 of these questions, or you can be the one that's like, hey, I'm going to focus more on getting to that point. So that's just, and that's using just your generative AI. That's just, for like me, I'm really into generative AI right now. Like you've mentioned in my bio. And so I always try to see like what I can do there before, I jump to some other tool. But there are so many other ways to gamify in ChatGPT or in other generative AI tools. That's just one that's pretty quick. You can put that standard in, you can talk about it. And I think too, like you said, what's really important is, the more information you give, obviously the better results you're going to get. And Alex Cotran from AI EDU, he was giving a speech one time and he said something along the lines of like, these prompts that people are writing, they're not a 5-minute thing. Like you can't expect a really good result if you're just throwing something in for like 5 minutes. Sometimes, and sometimes it comes out what you want. Because if you're giving it all that information in 5 minutes, like you said, you have it saved to a doc and you upload that doc, whatever it might be. But he's like, there are people that are writing prompts for hours to get that result they're looking for. And so, we have to realize if we are using these generative tools like this, there is going to be some vetting. There is additional information is going to be needed. But ultimately, you can get some really cool results.
Yeah. And if you get those results either in less time than it would have taken you to do it manually, or B, it's a better result than you would have gotten if you did it manually, then it's worth it. Like,
absolutely.
We want AI to be super fast, but also we want good quality content. And if we do it faster or better, then great. That's wonderful. So what are you doing with these questions? So it's created a gamified set. How do you run the game? Like what's happening next?
So you can do it in different ways. Some teachers will play it more like almost like Jeopardy, like as a class activity, and they'll, say for $20 question, whatever it might be. Some teachers that I have done this with, they post the questions just like in a Google form or whatever, and based on the value, and the students just take that quick little assessment that way. Some will put it into a different tool like Quizizz, where they can then assign values that way based on the points. So, and I've actually had teachers that will play like around the world, like go like back to like what we used to do as like a review game where, like you start and if you get the answer, you can go on to the next one. So I would say most of the teachers that I have showed this to do it more of like a Jeopardy style, but it can be an individual activity. It can be, like you need to work to this value. If they're doing a Jeopardy style, then, it's not so much as like you need to get to $1,000. That's more if you're having it's that individual review. But it can just be presented to students as like, hey, like here's all the questions, here's how much they're worth. You need to get to this point. And then, you turn that assessment in however you choose to pass it out. So it's been presented in different manners, but using that generative AI to get to that point is a time saver. And I always say having like two brains creating the assessment, because it's like you're still the one that's like really driving it, but then you have this like new co-teacher that is kind of there to really be like, oh, hey, remember we talked about this, or maybe we didn't talk about this and we should add it in. So it's kind of nice to have that too.
I think your suggestions are like, first of all, if you use AI to create this and then do it as a quote unquote analog game, like you don't use technology for it. Like how awesome is that?
Yeah.
You just like, you really use the technology to make your job easier, but then you did something in class that wasn't on technology, because we don't want kids on technology 24/7, so it's kind of nice that you're doing something non-technological when they do that. The other thing too is I love your Google Form option for this, because you can make them not required and let them just answer the ones they want to. And you could use conditional formatting.
Oh, that'd be cool.
To make it so they have to type in the right answer. So they could kind of keep track as they go of how many points they have and just submit it when they get enough.
Yeah.
Like there are ways to hack conditional formatting in forms, but hopefully kids aren't doing that. And then the other thing too, you mentioned putting this into Quizizz. Quizizz is really nice because you can upload a spreadsheet into it.
Yep.
And so if you prompt ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever you're using, or Claude, to organize the table the way that the Quizizz organizes spreadsheets, you could just copy and paste and upload. because Quizizz will you can identify times or point values, I think, when you do that, can't you?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, when you upload that spreadsheet, that's all part of it. So,
do you know other ones that allow uploads? I think Blooket does.
Blooket does and Quizizz. I'm not sure about the other ones yet, because those are the ones that we use primarily in our district. So I really focus on, like, most of my focus is on Quizizz, because we did actually purchase it this year. So we really used it a lot, but I know Blooket does too.
The data with Quizizz is just so good.
It's incredible. We've had a lot of our science and math teachers for years were like, can we please get this? Can we please get this? Because Quizizz has that, ability to write the math problems in and answer with using those different math symbols that a lot of the other gamified sites don't have or didn't have. And so we finally this year, we figured out a way to make it happen. And just, the data we used it for majority of our formatives, just our quick assessments to see like where our students were at. It was really rich.
Yeah. As much as I think that tools like Blooket and Gimkit are more fun, and they have good data if you're in the pro versions. Yeah. But Quizizz, even the free version, has really good formative assessment data. I don't want to like choose sides and say like use those ones, but the data in Quizizz is just great.
Well, and I was gonna, I mean, this is a good segue too, because the first tool I talked about was just using your favorite generative AI, but I was going to talk a little bit about Quizizz too, because there is, with the integration of AI that they pushed out over the last year, creating formative assessments for your students, it has never been easier. I mean, there are a lot of tools that do that now. I realize that, but we have found really good success using Quizizz, and it's in the free version too. So it's not something that you have to pay for. And there's multiple ways of doing it. So if you wanted to prompt it, you still wanted to be the chat engineer and you wanted to type all those things in, you can do that. Or like you mentioned, you can upload spreadsheets, you can upload an entire worksheet that maybe you created years ago that you still, we all have that filing cabinet of like the paper versions of our work that we still pass out, so you can scan that in or whatever and upload it to Quizizz and gamify it. What I love too is something else you can do is you can just drop a link in. So let's say you find a really great article on National Geographic Kids or whatever it might be, and your students read that article or you read it as a class, you can drop that link into Quizizz and it will generate a quiz based on the information that's pulled from that website. And then you still have the power, though. What's nice is you still have the power as the teacher, the proctor of that quiz, to go in and make adjustments. You can take questions out. You can, change questions up. You can change the response style, which is really nice. So if it generates questions as all multiple choice, but you want some extended response or whatever it might be, you can just go in and edit that, which is really, really cool. Another thing I love about Quizizz too is using that AI. You can make things more, I can't remember exactly how they word it, but they're more real world. So what you can do is you can press the little AI button and then you can change it so it converts it to a real world scenario. So it might be talking about like a dinosaur that has not existed for a long time, but then it throws it into, you're visiting a local museum where this dinosaur bone is or whatever it might be. So it puts it into a real world situation for your students, which is really cool. And that's also in the free version. It just does it super quick because of the AI powers there. I mean, there's just, it's incredible what Quizizz has done with their AI.
I mean, like the way they're all changing and adding in AI just is like mind blowing.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I love all these tools. Like, I am not picking one over the other. I mean, we are so fortunate to have all these different tools. I just, full transparency, have worked more with Quizizz over the last year than the other tools because that's something that we went to in our district. But it's just watching the advancement of all these different tools that we've used for so long. All of a sudden, they just have changed so much because of AI. It's really cool to see. It's really cool to be a part of that, I think, as someone in ed tech.
And a little bit stressful.
It's definitely stressful.
Quick question. If you're playing, which one is the most fun? Which of all of the review game tools do you think is most fun?
Oh, I still think Gimkit's the most fun. Just like
which one?
The original Gimkit. Like, I like the original power-ups. And I think too, maybe for me, it's a little sense of nostalgia because I remember like when I was still in the classroom, like that was when Gimkit had just come out, and I would tell my students we were playing Gimkit and they would like flip the desks in like a positive way. Like, yeah, they'd all get crazy. And honestly, I always loved Quizlet Live. Like when the animal groups, like the students would get like super excited. They'd be like, oh, we're part of the giraffes or whatever. And like, they get so excited. But I think personally, Gimkit is the one that I would say to me is like the most fun, just because I don't know, like I think it started like a different movement, but they're also powerful. They're also great. So Blooket has just come in and done so many great things too. So
yeah, I think I'm a Blooket fan the most, but I'd be sad if the others were gone. I want to use them all. Like I want to be able to switch back and forth between them all and all the different game modes, right? But now I'm going to generate my questions using AI. Like what a cool idea to save that time, because that was the time intensive part, was preparing the game, right? You used to, like 5 years ago, there'd be a game available in the database where you could just like use somebody else's game, but they were not always very good, right? So if you could go like, hey, AI, make this game for me, and then you could just put it in, or it's already in there based on if the tool has AI, and you just vet it, like, can you save that time, get some really good questions out of it? And like we said, give it as much information as you can so that it's as quality as it can be. Then you've saved that time. You're getting some good formative assessment information. Your kids are having a blast. They're being metacognitive as they think about what questions to ask and do I understand and things like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think, like you had mentioned before, like even taking your time coming up with, giving all the information to the generative AI, it's still saving you time compared to what you used to do. I mean, it's still like, even looking back, like, 6-7 years ago, the amount of time and I would love to do it, like make these formatives, make these games for my class. Like I'd type in every question into Kahoot or every question into Quizlet. And, and it was great because the students loved it. And it was a wonderful way to get that data, to get those formative assessments in a fun way. But now, I mean, I'd be watching, whatever sporting event was on TV, and I'd watch the entire game by the time that 10 question, Kahoot was done or whatever. But now it's a fraction of the time, and I'm still putting in more information that I had, information from blogs, information from everywhere, because I can drop those links in, whatever I can throw in there. And it's it's saving me time, and it's just giving me really awesome questions to ask my students.
Yeah. And I think too, like a kind of a pro tip with any repetitive task you do with AI is to save the prompt so that you can keep reusing it. So once you write that prompt, save it so you can copy it and paste it and just change out the topic and the standard and things like that. Or certainly if you, like, for example, I currently am a subscriber to GPT Plus or whatever they call it. And so I could build my own GPTs where it leads to skill. So I could teach it DOK. I could teach it depth and complexity. I could teach it the way to ask questions. I could teach it the way to assign points. I could teach it that I always want it to be questions valued from $10 to $100, and there always needs to be 40, and there always needs to be worth a total of 1,000 is the goal, whatever. And then I could just say, here's the new standard and learning progression. Make me the quiz. And it could keep learning. I could teach it how to no, not that kind of question, not this kind of question. Like I could really get it really good by building it. But if you don't have that, if you're just using a free version, just kind of save that prompt and keep tweaking that prompt to make it better and better so that each time you get quicker.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't pay for the updated ChatGPT, but the recent updates that have rolled out with ChatGPT 4 coming through for free, I've noticed just the features that it was powerful before, and I'm, it's just getting more powerful. And it's still, you can still organize it. But I have an entire folder in my Google Drive that is literally just prompts that I have developed. And then I can just copy and paste that prompt in and just change a couple of words, change, the standard, whatever it might be, to get results based on, that modified search. So it's, always just save them. I mean, especially in like your Google Drive where your space is essentially unlimited, or very close to it, just make a folder.
Yeah. Pro tips. Starring Dan Stitzel. AI pro tips starring Dan Stitzel. Ralph Macchio Jr.
Daniel LaRusso.
Well, thank you, Daniel LaRusso. Yeah. So thank you for sharing all this stuff. It was great having you on the show. Your jacket, one sleeve, one half sleeve, will be shipped tomorrow.
Perfectly.
UPS. Fortunately, you're in Ohio, so it won't cost me as much to send you the jacket as it sends. Like this season, I had somebody on from England. I'm going to pay a lot of money to send his one-sleeved jacket to him. So yours has the extra half of a sleeve for that half episode, that mini episode, but like the shipping will be a little bit lower for me.
I'll tell you what, I'll save you the money, and we can just meet halfway somewhere, and you can just hand it to me, and so I'll save you the perfect. Sounds great. We'll get some tacos, and I'll wear my 1.5 sleeve jacket with pride.
Oh, I can't wait to see the jacket on you. It's going to look so
I'm going to use the half sleeve one though for my taco hand because I don't want to spill the taco on my full sleeve.
Oh, okay. So you want half sleeve on the right?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, you got it. I'll got the custom order for you. All right, Dan. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Dan, you can send him an email if you have questions at dnstitzel@gmail.com. His email address is in the show notes, so you can get to him from there and ask questions if you need to. And thanks again, Dan. It was good having you on.
Thanks for having me, Jake. This was fun.
I had such a good time chatting with my buddy Dan. I was expecting him to just be like, oh, I like Blooket, or oh, I like Blooket, if he wanted to pronounce it incorrectly. Or maybe he'd say, ooh, Gimkit is good. And either way, it'd be a good answer. But he went and surprised me by reinventing the idea of a class review game formative assessment with a total AI reinvention of the idea. Really surprised me with that. Very cool stuff. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Before we sign off, let's take a quick look at some EdTech news that's caught my attention. First up, I keep mentioning Canva's updates in this segment. This time, I want to focus on their entire suite of AI tools, which have been recently enhanced to make your creative process faster and easier. They've added so much stuff. So now they've got Magic Media, Magic Write, Magic Design, and Styles, all of which let you whip up graphics or personalized text or create high quality templates while keeping everything on brand. And if you need some inspiration or a quick design tweak, which is what I normally need, I want it to get me started with an idea and then I like to run with it myself. They've got layouts and resize and magic switch to help you out with that kind of stuff. Plus, they've got a photo editor and a video editor that come packed with AI features to perfect your visuals with ease. So many new additions to Canva. Honestly, I haven't even explored them all. I need like a week off of work to just sit and mess with all these different tools. What part of Canva's Magic Studio are you most excited to try? I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on BlueSky, as I mentioned earlier, and let me know about it. Use that hashtag EDUDuctTape and tag me at JakeMillerEDU and let me know, what are you most excited about in Canva's Magic Studio? Next, let's talk about some Googly news. Google added new question types in Google Forms for the first time since maybe since the beginning of the tool. I'm not even sure. Anyhow, they've added customizable ratings questions. You can set a specific rating scale and even add fun icons like stars or hearts to make it easier for students to share their opinions and their feedback. Star ratings. What is this, Amazon? This is a great addition, though. I'm really excited about it. And I'm curious, how are you using this in your classroom or school? Again, reach out on BlueSky and let me know all about it. Finally, on the MagicSchool front, they've added a presentation generator to their cornucopia of amazing tools. Every time I go into MagicSchool, I'm like, there's so much stuff in here to look at. It's kind of like Canva. I haven't even seen it all in MagicSchool yet. I use that little star to put my favorites up at the top so I can come back to them. But there's so many things in there. And now there's a presentation generator as well. It can turn topics or learning standards, or you can upload a Google Doc or give it a YouTube video or a link to a certain thing like a URL, even give it your lesson plans, and it'll turn them into presentations. So you just type it in or link it in or upload your content, tell it what grade level it's for, tell it how many slides you want, and it'll generate the skeleton of a structured presentation for you. It doesn't add any design elements, but it gets the content in there for you, and it does a really good job of it. You should try it out. I'm curious. I gave you 3 new updates, 3 pieces of EdTech news there. Canva Magic Media, Google Forms, adding those customizable rating scales, and MagicSchool's presentation generator. Which one are you most excited for? Head over to BlueSky, create that account, connect with me, use the hashtag EDUDuctTape, and let us know which one you're most excited about. All right, that does it for today. I can't wait to connect with you all on BlueSky. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Please consider rating and reviewing the show on your favorite podcast app. #EduDuctTape. Bye.